So I did two Van Halen videos recently where I talked about my infatuation with the band. They were the first band that I really, really got into as a kid. 12 years old. Most bands had like one or two records out that I was getting into at the time that were new, and they had six. And I just like binged on Van Halen. Loved Van Halen. Couldn't get enough of Van Halen. And yeah, my dad joked around that I would buy toilet paper if it had the Van Halen logo on it or said Van Halen on it. And those two videos I'll link below. But as much as I thought I was maybe done with Van Halen, and because I'd done two videos and devoted quite a bit of time to it and listening and all that, I just kind of couldn't let it go. And why I couldn't let it go is I looked at my bookshelf and I saw this book. Now, this book came out in 2015. I bought it probably in 2015, but I never really read it. I think I kind of skimmed it, and to be honest, I was like, I don't really care so much about the band's formation and the playing in clubs around LA years. I care more about give me information about recording sessions. Let me know what happened during Women and Children First, around the poster, or the recording sessions for Fair Warning. All of it, the road stories, all of it. That's what I was at the time and thought I was more interested in. But after doing these videos, when I saw this book on the shelf in here, I pulled it out, I started looking at it, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try to read this. And I was amazed how well it was written, and I was amazed how quickly it captured me. I must not have read much more than the introduction, if that, in the past. But anyway, I was glad I had it lying around, and after I read it, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna have to do one more video. And not saying I won't do Van Halen and anything related ever again. I mean, technically I didn't rank the albums or anything. Could always do that at some point. But I want to talk about this book. It's an excellent book. Greg Renoff wrote it. He also did a book after this about Ted Templeman, the producer of those classic Van Halen records with Roth, and he did one with Sammy as well. For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge was done, produced by Ted Templeman, and Ted produced some of the Sammy's, at least one Sammy Hagar solo record too. Anyway, we're talking about the original, Van Halen with Roth here. But yeah, he wrote a very, very good book, and he really takes you into not only their beginnings of Alex and Eddie Van Halen and their family coming over from Holland, and just how they had to start over. Like, their father was a professional musician in Holland and really had to couldn't really make a living off doing music in California in the US the way that he could in Holland. It took him a long time to start to get that going, and to work a lot of different odd jobs. But he loved it. He played the clarinet, and once he got going at some of these nightclubs, he would have Eddie and Alex sit in with him sometimes. And sometimes, he would tell Alex to keep his head low so they wouldn't know he's a kid. And then sometimes Eddie and Alex would kind of do their own thing while their dad was playing. Sometimes I think little shows while, between sets or whatever. Meanwhile, across town, you got David Lee Roth, who's kind of this loudmouth kid, super interesting, and everybody says he said he wanted to be a rock star from day one. He was bused to like an interracial school where he grew up with a lot of black and Mexican kids at his school and absorbed those cultures. Whereas the Van Halen brothers were a little bit more, white bread, kind of more mainstream music of the 70s, early 70s, late 60s, early 70s. David Lee Roth got into all kinds of stuff. And it's the blending of these two people, these two groups, essentially, Van Halen, and then David Lee Roth fronted this band called Red Ball Jet. They weren't supposed to be that amazing or anything, but the guy clearly had something that drew people to him. A lot of energy, strong personality, just Mr. Entertainer up there. He auditioned for Van Halen. This is what I found interesting too. The brothers noticed him at some point. They knew who he was. I don't think they liked him. I think they thought he was probably pretty obnoxious. But he got either invited. No, I think he asked for an audition for them. Came over, lasted a couple songs, and they told him to his face, like, no, we're not interested. He begged for another edition. He came back like 2 weeks later with different songs to learn. Bombed again. They're like, no. And I think after that, he asked him like one more time, and they're like, no, we're not interested. Meanwhile, Van Halen are playing, but they're playing, and they're drawing quite an audience. People are blown away by Eddie, but he's playing a lot of these long, note for note covers of songs by Cream and all kinds of early 70s bands, and really doing exceptionally well job at it. And apparently they would do the Van Halen brothers, and Eddie would be singing most of the time. They would do these album sides, like they did side 2 of Master of Reality, and just kind of blow people away at how note for note perfect it sounded. And according to a lot of people, it didn't even really matter what the vocalists sounded like, because they were just so good at their musicianship, their instruments. But meanwhile, David Lee Roth is kind of starting to excel a little bit. They're getting some bookings. Van Halen starts asking, or their PA company, the people they rented their PA from, started pricing them out, raise their prices. And I think Dave happened to be there, and he's like, hey, I got a PA, I'll rent it to you. So he rented their PA system to him. This is kind of a story that everybody knows. But then the Van Halen brothers were paying for it, and Roth was like, hey, put me in the band and I'll give you won't have to pay me for the PA system anymore. And he kind of talked himself into it, and I think he really thought he could take them to the next level. I find this, I'm going to pause and then I'm going to read you this core part that I think is so important, understanding where Roth took Van Halen. So this is from the book. This is about 80 pages in. So when the brothers replied that they had little luck booking nightclubs, Roth assured them that people went to nightclubs to get down, not to relive Woodstock. Quote, it's because you play all 20 minutes of I'm So Glad by Cream, complete with drum solos live note for note, and it's very impressive, but you can't dance to it. Mammoth, as they were known then, had the players and the chops. It was the musical mindset, and most importantly, the songs that had to change. Another quote from Roth here. I will personally check every song for danceability, Roth guaranteed, and we'll play rock tunes, but ones you can dance to. The more Roth talked, the more the brothers nodded. And he really did. He helped them take these long songs, make them shorter, poppier. He did that with original material eventually, and they started getting bookings. And the thing about Roth, too, is he was relentless. Like, he told people early on, not that he wanted to be a rock star, that he was going to be a rock star. I think there's a bit of a difference there, right? And he was just relentless with practicing. I mean, they practiced all the time. They would take any gig they could get. He was just constantly calling people. A lot of people rubbed the wrong way by him. I mean, probably for the same reason he rubs people the wrong way today. But you could not deny that the guy had a way. I mean, he became very fascinating to watch on stage. And he worked on his vocals. He took vocal lessons at a couple different points in the book they mention. And he really, really started to get them some gigs. They would play anywhere and everywhere. Eventually, he was the one that got him into Gazzarri's and into, what's the other one? There's another one on Sunset Strip I'm trying to think of. Oh, Starwood Club. And yeah, so I think the thing that I take away that I like so much about this book is, people criticize David Lee Roth for all kinds of reasons. Oh, he can't really sing. Oh, he's just obnoxious. He's just a drunken idiot up there, whatever. I don't think that's the case if you look back at old videos. I just recently saw a 1978 video in Fresno where they opened up for Black Sabbath. And that's the thing, too. This book goes into that first tour, the record, recording, all of it, Van Halen one. And it's just incredible. I mean, vocally, he's absolutely incredible. And it's just like the energy on that stage. The thing that I think people just don't realize is that Roth was so instrumental with this band and getting them to not only shorten and tighten their songs and make sure it rocked, but also you could dance to it. And really they just really workshopped so many of these songs live for years. I mean, these guys started, Mammoth started in, I think, 72, 73, 72. They were known as Genesis originally, and then Mammoth. And then they had to change their name because there's another Mammoth, and Roth suggested Van Halen. But I think the biggest takeaway from this book is just how hard Roth worked for it. How hard all of them did. But the guy was just, he was their secret power. I think without Roth, they would probably have been musicians someday and probably gotten signed. But who knows if they had had any kind of the longevity that they ended up having, because he really taught them how to edit and how to really make the best of what they had and really put it together in a like amazing package. The other thing that was just so impressive too is just the length of time they went. Like Roth joins the band in 74. They didn't get a record deal until 77. That first record didn't come out until 78. They're playing biker bars, they're playing anywhere they can get a gig, and working on songs. After a while, they were like, we can't just keep doing cover songs. We got to do our own stuff. And they fought hard to do that too. And they came close. Gene Simmons saw them at the Starwood Club once they got in there, brought Paul Stanley too, and was completely blown away and tried to get a record deal for them. At the time, they had just recorded Rock and Roll Over, and they were set to go on tour. They needed to rehearse. And I think, Van Halen's Kiss's manager just didn't seem that interested in them. Gene Simmons said, you're gonna regret this. You're gonna eat those words, when he said that he didn't want to do anything with it. And the rest of the band was getting pissed at Gene because he wasn't like as active in Kiss. He was recording Van Halen. I mean, these demo tapes were kind of fussed over a little bit. 2 different recording sessions, some overdubs. And Eddie learned from that experience he just did not like to overdub at all. And if you listen to that demo recordings that they did with Gene Simmons, and you listen to Van Halen 1, I mean, there's quite a bit of difference there. But they didn't go anywhere with that. They had a demo tape they could use, a new, professionally recorded one. They weren't that happy with it, and they were surprised it didn't go anywhere. So they just kept playing and kept playing. They were drawing massive crowds by this point too. And then finally Ted Templeman discovers them and takes Mo Austin the next day. He's completely blown away, primarily by Eddie. And then, they get a record deal, and they're recording Van Halen 1, and basically, at the very beginning, it is true that Ted Templeman thought of Sammy Hagar because he had produced Montrose's record, the first one, years before. And it was kind of almost a blueprint for how he was going to record Van Halen. And he wasn't that impressed with Roth at first, but then Roth worked his ass off, and he was super impressed by him and totally changed his mind by the end of that record. But a lot of people say if you listen to that record the way it's mixed versus the other ones, it is a little bit more guitar focused than the other ones. But anyway, it's just so impressive. The recording sessions, they finally had this record. Then they had to wait for the damn thing to come out, and it took quite a while. Continued to play shows, although Warner Brothers was like, hey, they kind of wanted to limit them on how many shows they could play. So they had long periods of downtime, but they kept practicing and practicing and practicing. Record comes out. They get opening gigs, first with Journey, then with Black Sabbath. And the band members of the bands that headlined were like kind of not happy with how good they were. They were blowing people off the stage. Neil Schon was embarrassed to do his guitar work, apparently. Black Sabbath, Ozzy was like, not only do we have to follow this Eddie Van Halen guy, but then the most good-looking, best-looking frontman you've ever seen walks into my dressing room, and it's David Roth. And Black Sabbath were in decline at that point, kind of running on fumes. So, and Journey were, I don't know, they're not half the band as Van Halen, I don't think, live. But anyway, really, really cool story. Just the beginning of the band, the brotherhood. It makes it all the more sad to me that they ended up breaking up and had such bad blood between them for so many years, because they really were just a powerhouse and had each other's backs and really played to all of their strengths. Even Michael Anthony, when he came in, I mean, Eddie liked to downplay his involvement later on, but he sounds like he's a core part of all of this too. He clearly was. But anyway, that's a lowdown of the book. Hopefully, I didn't spoil it for anybody or turn it off if I was spoiling it. I'll put a little I don't know, disclaimer at the beginning. I wasn't sure how I was going to go about it, and I basically just kind of summarized the book, although I'm leaving tons of it out. It's a really enjoyable book. But like I said, it really does get to the core of why this band was so special and so much fun. My God, the backyard parties they would throw were just insane. I mean, cop cars flipped over and like thousands of people coming. Some of these parents would be out of town, these rich kids around Pasadena, and they would invite Van Halen to play and just be totally unprepared for the amount of people that would come. And lots of paying their dues, but they sound like they had a blast every step of the way. So highly recommend Van Halen Rising. And I don't know if my Van Halen infatuation again is gonna last too much longer. Probably won't do a video for a while, but really felt like I had to do one on this. Thanks everyone.